Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Drier weather for many during the next 24 hours, but showers will continue in places, and for some, thunderstorms will happen, particularly overnight. An area of low pressure is sliding to the southwest of the UK, and then it will run along the English Channel. That's going to bring some lively weather. It's already pepping up the showers across parts of Wales and the southwest. That will continue through the evening. Thunderstorms possible, and the risk of 30 to 40 millimetres of rain falling in one or two spots in a short space of time. That could cause some issues overnight, and then that risk transfers into southeastern shores by the end of the night. Eventually, parts of Kent affected by dawn. Otherwise, clearing skies across much of the UK, and with light winds, temperatures dipping into the mid or even low single figures, and in one or two shelter spots down below freezing, -2, -3 Celsius across parts of northern UK first thing. But plenty of dry and bright weather around, the showers in the south clearing away, and then further showers will affect northwestern areas, particularly those areas exposed to the northwest wind, so northwest Scotland, northwest England. But away from the showers, plenty of sunny spells, and a colder day compared with recent days. Temperatures reaching 13 Celsius generally in the south, 11 in the north. Now through the evening, clearing skies will lead to a touch of frost in places, but towards the end of the night, the cloud thickens, the breeze picks up, and outbreaks of rain will move into parts of Northern Ireland, West Wales and the southwest of England. That means it's a mild end to the night in the west, but further east, that's where it will be a chilly start on Saturday with a touch of frost in places. But a bright start for eastern Scotland, eastern England as well. Keep the sunshine until around the middle of the morning, whilst the wetter weather and the cloud further west pushes in. Now, by the end of the afternoon, actually that's clearing Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Brighter skies here, albeit staying breezy. And further east, it is a dull and damp end to the day. Showers follow on Sunday and on Monday.
This is Farage at Live from Stoke-on-Trent. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage. Okay, well, this is Stoke-on-Trent. It's Farage at Large. We're going to be talking migrant hotels, not just a local story, a national story, net zero. Jonathan Gullis, the local MP, is with us. It looks like we have a very enthusiastic audience. But first, let's get the news from Polly Middlehouse.
Nigel, thank you and good evening to you. The top story tonight, survivors of the Manchester Arena bombing say on the night of the attack they felt as if they'd been left to die. That comes as a highly critical inquiry found there were significant failings by the emergency services. The victims' families have described the multi-agency response as catastrophic, saying it showed the system was truly broken and needed a complete overhaul. 22 people were killed and hundreds injured during an Ariana Grande concert in 2017. Solicitor Kim Harrison, who represented 11 families in the inquiry, says almost everything that could have gone wrong that night did go wrong.
Every single emergency service needs to admit its mistakes honestly and commit without defensiveness or hesitation to implement Sir John's recommendations without delay. 12 years after 7/7, the same things went wrong again at Manchester Arena. The complete and utter failure of the government and the emergency services to learn those lessons and implement them on a national level is wholly unacceptable. This must never happen again.
Well, Greater Manchester Police Chief Constable Stephen Watson apologised unreservedly for the failings of the emergency services.
Beyond the selflessness and professionalism of so many of our frontline staff, it is also clear that our coordination of the response to this atrocity was poor. We had failed to plan effectively, and the execution of that which was planned was simply not good enough.
In other news today, a mother and her partner have been sentenced to life in prison for the murder of her 15-year-old son in Huddersfield in August last year. Sebastian Kalinowski died from untreated complications following weeks of abuse. Andras Latusevsky and Agnes Kalinowska were sentenced at Leeds Crown Court. They'll spend a minimum of 39 years in prison. Now, the Bank of England has warned the UK will travel a tough road ahead as it raised the interest rate to tackle soaring inflation. The base rate's going up by 0.75% to 3%, which is the single biggest rise in more than 3 decades. The Bank of England says the country is on course for its longest recession since the 1920s. The Home Secretary has visited 2 immigration centres in Kent today as she came under increasing pressure over her handling of the migrant crisis. Suella Braverman says she met with experts at the Western Jetfoil and Manston sites to see what progress was being made in reducing the number of immigrants there. The government faces potential legal action now over conditions at the Manston facility. Downing Street says 1,000 migrants were located from the site on Sunday. And the White House has strongly condemned the attack on Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who was shot in the leg after a gunman opened fire on his convoy. The assassination attempt happened as he was leading a protest march on the capital, Islamabad, to demand a snap election. Mr. Khan has been taken to hospital. His injuries aren't thought to be life-threatening. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now we take you live to Stoke-on-Trent for Farage at large.
Well, good evening, everyone at home. I'm here in Stoke-on-Trent. As you can hear, they were thinking of renaming Stoke-on-Trent Brexit Central, because I think that's what this part of the country voted 70% Brexit. And what's so fascinating is from 1950, all of these seats were held by the Labour Party. But people in Stoke felt left behind by the Labour Party, felt that it was too London-based, or certainly North London-based. They wanted Brexit. They wanted proper border controls. They voted Brexit in big numbers, and now, astonishingly, all 3 constituencies here are represented by Conservative members of Parliament. The Brexit campaign fundamentally changed politics in Stoke. But will it stay changed? Because my feeling is one of those really big burning issues was about proper border controls. And if any of us had imagined on that day, June the 23rd, when we went out to vote in 2016, that it would have resulted in 80,000 people now having crossed the English Channel in small boats, most of them young, single males, coming from countries and cultures very different to ours. I don't think any of us who voted Brexit that day would have thought that it could have come to this. The point of Farage at Large, the point of our People's Forums, is we actually want to get on our television screens, on our radios, the voices of real people, not just politicians and journalists. And the debate in the Commons this week was fascinating. Labour and Tory MPs saying, you must book more hotels. We need... Today's Farage at Large is here in Stoke-on-Trent. Here I am in the centre of town, the main train station behind me. But just 50 yards away, there's a story that isn't just a local story, it is a national story. Yup, it's the North Stafford Hotel. You might have read about it in your national newspapers this morning. Why? That's because people crossing the English Channel need to be put in hotels. You heard earlier this week Labour and Tory MPs crying out for it. So the owners of this hotel have agreed with Serco, acting for the government, to turn this into a migrant hotel, predominantly for young Albanians. The local council here in Stoke, having already got some of these hotels in the area, objected. They lost their court case 2 days ago. And today and tomorrow, there will be people in this hotel, homeless people with families, women who've suffered domestic abuse and violence, who at the council's expense are being put into a North Stafford hotel. They will be removed in favour of those who've recently crossed the Channel on small boats. So I've just met somebody who is a regular in this hotel, plumber by trade, currently working on panels. I see you've got your room key with you. How do you feel knowing this won't be a regular haunt anymore?
It adds a bit of stress to me, because I know other hotels in the area are going to be putting the prices up if there's less available rooms.
So that's the problem. You're on the road working, away from home, you need hotels. It's a very powerful point, that, isn't it? You know, if there are now 4,500 people being put in hotels all over the country, people like our friend here is going to have to start paying higher hotel prices. In the hotel, I don't know whether you've seen it, there's quite a lot of vulnerable people there, aren't there, being put in by the council?
I haven't seen anybody this week, but yeah, there seems to be a few, yeah.
Yeah, and they're being displaced.
Yes.
By people, by people that have crossed the Channel in boats in the last fortnight. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's frustrating, isn't it? As you know, you should be looking after your own first, shouldn't you? Quite simply.
I think that comment sums up the way the vast majority of Brits feel.
There's homeless sleeping every night outside this train station.
There's homeless here every night?
Every night outside this train station there's homeless people sleeping every night.
And yet, this hotel's about to become one for those that have crossed the Channel.
Right, yeah.
Following the judgment of the court yesterday, earlier on this morning, GB News were here. We've got this video of the flags of the name of the group that own the hotel being removed. Clearly, they're too embarrassed for it to be public. Security vans coming to take cash out of the hotel. Other vans arriving to bring new bedding into the hotel. And at 7 o'clock this morning, you could have booked a room here or a Christmas lunch. You can't now. It's block booked for the next year. So the local council here fought a court case to try and stop the Home Office, Serco, the company they use, turning that hotel, that historic hotel, into a migrant hotel. They've lost the court case. They tried to get a second injunction. They failed. They said they're considering what to do. I would suggest to the good people of Stoke, it's over. That hotel will be block booked for the next year. And the extraordinary thing is this is happening in a city that has already taken more than its fair share of those that have come into this country across the Channel and in the back of lorries. There are parts of Stoke where 1 in 30 of the population are asylum seekers. It is a truly astonishing figure. And it's actually cities like Stoke that are really paying the cost for this. Now, what I'm about to show you and tell you, you will not get on any other TV or radio station in this country. And I've no doubt the full truth of what has emerged today, and what I'm about to share with you, is something that will lead to me being attacked openly by Diane Abbott and many others. But let's pick up a quick package from our Home Affairs correspondent, Mark White, who was down at Manston today.
Concerning reports confirmed to me now by the Metropolitan Police about a couple of incidents at a hotel that is being used to house refugees in Waltham Forest in East London. These incidents took place, one last month and the other a few weeks before that. Incidents involving allegations that a teenage boy was raped by someone staying at that hotel. Now, the Metropolitan Police have confirmed that they investigated that allegation. They've arrested a man in his 30s in connection with that ongoing allegation that a teenage boy was raped by an individual staying at that hotel housing refugees. Also, confirmation that another incident is being investigated, and indeed someone was charged with an allegation of touching a child under the age of 13 a few weeks before. Now, that individual, a 17-year-old youth, has been charged and will be appearing in court in the coming days. So, two concerning incidents. The leader of Waltham Forest Council has now written to Suella Braverman about concerns she has about this hotel, because it's housing around 250 adults alongside 150 children in conditions where the sort of oversight and vetting processes are, according to the council, not all they should be.
Well, that disturbing report from Mark White. And by the way, I'm not trying to demonise anybody or any group of people, but I do think the British public need to hear the truth and not have the truth hidden from them. Because today, yes, today, an Eritrean man who came across the English Channel and was staying in a migrant hotel in Wigan, just up the road, he today has been jailed for 9 years for rape. Today, we have discovered that in Manston, Kent, a man who's just spent 3 weeks there is a convicted Albanian murderer with firearms offences. He has now been imprisoned, but wait for this. His asylum application is still allowed to proceed. We have lost our marbles. Something, I think, has gone terribly wrong in this country. I believe that on this question, Westminster and mainstream media are more out of touch with the rest of this country than on any other issue I've seen in my political lifetime. Now, I would like to get some responses, please, from members of the audience. Give me your thoughts, give me your views on what's happened here in the last 24 hours, what's been happening generally over the last few years. Who would like, hands up, who would like to contribute and give me some thoughts on this debate? But he's behind you. Sir, do come up to microphone. Another gentleman there, another gentleman there. Please, three of you, do come forward to the microphone. Don't fight each other for who's at the front. And while you're doing that, I want to share with the audience some of the things that have been said on Stoke-on-Trent Live Facebook today. Jackie says, and this is about the hotel, Jackie says, my daughter goes to North Staffs Uni. It's worrying. Rach says, mine goes to the sixth form. I feel the same. Simon says, your daughter has more to worry about from Stokes-born wrong-uns than they do from asylum seekers. And Kevin says, well, he says the trouble is, it's no secret that the attitude to unaccompanied girls and women in most of the home countries where these young men come from is very different to ours. We already have huge problems in our own country. We don't need to add to them. That's my view. Let's get some thoughts from members of the public. Sir, your name, please.
Steve Smith, Nigel.
Steve, how do you feel about what's happened here in the last 24 hours?
It's an absolute disgrace, but it doesn't surprise you one bit. And going back to the North Stafford Hotel...
Yes.
I can give you a bit of an insight. My grandfather there was the head waiter for 30-odd years when it was the place to be. All the Hollywood stars, top football team, everybody stayed there. The big doorman, Tug Wilson, great place, great blokes. And now I'm glad he can't witness it.
Yeah, and how does it make you feel, I mean, politically? I mean, were you a Brexit voter?
Yes.
Was controlling borders part of your motivation for doing that?
Yes.
We have had now over 6 years since Brexit. of a Conservative government that won a big majority and promised to deliver. Have you got a message for Rishi Sunak?
Yes, he needs to get delivering because they've done absolutely nothing. Nothing whatsoever.
And would they lose your vote because of this?
Oh, definitely, yes.
Steve, thank you very much indeed for being very frank. Thank you. Sir, your name, please.
Good evening, Nigel. My name's Peter Wilkinson.
Peter, hello.
I'm not actually... I'm in the Staffordshire Moorlands. I'm a district councillor. And I actually stood for UKIP when you were in UKIP.
OK.
But I'm now an independent councillor.
Good for you.
But my concerns are this hotel it's historically a Grade 2 listed building. It's been there since 1840. And it was owned by the North Staffordshire Railway. People get off the station and that's the first thing they see. You know, it's not going to be good for Stoke-on-Trent. It's not going to be good for tourism because they're going to get off the station and they're going to see an asylum, like hostel, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Now, my concern also is, you know, I travel to London occasionally. I park my vehicle there. But we're getting these asylum seekers. We don't know who they are. We don't know their history. We don't know if they're criminals. So that's going to have a massive impact on the local community. So, you know, everybody's got concerns about this because we are bringing people in and we don't know who they are.
Well, isn't that right? I mean, in the past, whether it was the Ugandan Asians or, you know, other groups of people that came to this country who genuinely were in fear of their lives, genuine refugees, many of them have actually flourished and succeeded in our country and done incredibly well. But we knew who they were. I have witnessed, Richard, myself and filmed and shown on GB News, people getting to the 12-mile line off Dover. I've watched them, filmed them, chucking their iPhones and their documents into the sea so we can't identify them. It is, I'm with you. You make some strong points, and I thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've got time. One more comment, please. Yes, sir.
Evening, Nigel. Carl,
hello.
I totally agree with the council there. It's an absolutely shocking decision for the Home Office to do that. I mean, it makes it just opposite there. There's a levelling up fund project, which I don't know if you know about that. There's a massive levelling up project, and that's nobody's going to invest, are they? They're going to have this building full of people where we don't know who's coming. It's just a shocking, absolute decision. I don't know if are the offices talking to one another. Do they care?
Well, the problem they've got is there are so many coming in. I guess from their perspective, they've simply got to put them somewhere. You look actually quite upset by this.
I find the decision absolutely baffled by it. I mean, Jonathan Gullis sitting behind. He's got to get behind the Home Secretary or he's got no chance of having a job.
I tell you what, Carl, I'll put that to him later in the programme. OK, let's take a break. In a minute, we'll come back and we'll talk about net zero. We'll find out how strongly Stoke wants heat pumps, Teslas and net zero. All of that in just a moment.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation, the This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere. Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful. Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Big news! My Saturday night show just got bigger. More guests, more stories, and more big opinions.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
That's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In, this Saturday from 8, only on GB News. Who needs the pub? Bring a bottle and I'll see you there.
OK, we're back. Now, let's get some thoughts from some of you at home to what has happened here in Stoke and what is happening more broadly across the country. Colin says, true to form, Johnson creates a catastrophic problem and walks away. The migrant crisis started under his watch and he's just stood back and watched. Michael says, how many of the children at the asylum centres are over 30 years of age, do you think? Well, we've had this, haven't we? You know, I'm 15. I mean, you know, they look like prop forwards. You know, they got stubble. But that's the problem, isn't it? I honestly believe if I spoke to this audience individually and asked them about whether we as a country can be open-hearted to those from around the world in genuine fear of their life, I think they'd be like their forebears. We've always, as a country, been generous. What we know is the system is being gamed. What we know is the taxpayer has been taken for a ride and we don't like it. One last thought. Alan says, if being held for 24 hours to process immigrants is being used for legal action, simple, send them straight back. This is getting stupid. It's taxpayers' money and I object. And certainly in the case of Albania, nobody from Albania should ever be able to claim refugee status in this country. It's a beautiful holiday destination. It's a NATO member. It's not had conflict for 25 years. Now, I'm going to move on to a slightly different subject, but one equally that I think is very, very important and affects people's lives absolutely hugely. Professor John Grant is Senior Lecturer in Sustainable Construction and Climate Change at Sheffield Hallam, and he joins me now. Welcome to the programme. Thank you. Now, if we were sitting in Richmond and the average house of a price was about £2.5 million, and we had huge incomes, and our names were Mrs. Carrie Johnson or Lord Zach Goldsmith, we might genuinely think, what's the problem buying a Tesla? What's the problem getting rid of your old gas boiler and getting a heat pump? But the reality is, you come to Middle England, and we literally are in Middle England here in Stoke. Why should these people have to pay a massive price for the government's ambitions to go green?
Well, this idea of cost versus investment, I think, is the big problem here. So it often gets put out that this is going to be a huge cost for people, and there is a lot of money required here. But what we should look at here is, over time, if there was support, you would get this money back. It's an investment if you can get a return on it, but it's a cost if an international company takes away your money because what you're paying on your bills.
I mean, let's think about this. You know, these folk have had their electricity bills lumped with subsidy, 20-25% at times on their electricity bills. No explanation, no debate, all political parties supporting it. That money's gone to giant wind turbine companies. It's gone to Chinese manufacturers, Danish wind companies. It's employed a few people. But the reality is it's given us expensive electricity. And I say that because we're in the potteries. You know, we're in one of the places that flourished in the Industrial Revolution. We know those days have gone, but we also know Stoke still has a lot of engineering, a lot of industry. They are paying much higher prices for their electricity than their American or European counterparts. We're not being fair with this, John, are we?
No, but the good news is that energy from renewables is now much cheaper than energy from gas or any of the fossil fuels. That technology has improved. So there is a huge opportunity in how we make our energy, but it's not being passed on to the consumer. You're quite right. There are international firms owning those. We need local people to own these technologies so they can get...
What British companies?
Absolutely. Or even people. I mean, I was involved in a village that had their own wind turbine that over the year produces more power than the village uses. And they get a dividend from that every year.
I mean, I would be convinced that we'd spent all this money, that we taxed all these good people. I might be convinced that it's a good thing if you could promise me that, having gone for wind the way we have, that the lights won't go out this winter.
OK, I'll do it. Because the research that we've looked at, if, and it's a big if, we invest in these people's homes to improve them, that's the key problem here. These people here, 28 million houses across the UK. The building regulations that we've been building to are really substandard. So you can legally build a building that is as leaky as a sieve when it comes to energy efficiency. And we can improve on that. And we can employ people that live here and work here to do that work. And once you've done that, then that much lower amount of energy, kind of a depowering without losing any resources.
All right, we can be more efficient. I get that.
A lot.
I get
a lot
that.
More
That's logical. It might bring people's bills down in the long run too. I understand, John, and I get all of that. But we're doing all of this in the name of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, which many even now call a pollutant. Carbon dioxide without which plants can't even live. Carbon dioxide, man's contribution to that is 3% of the total amount of CO2 produced in the whole world. Is it, I want to ask you the serious question, is it worth us going through this pain, all the while China are building up to 80 new coal-fired power stations every single year?
Well, it's worth it because every little does help, but also China is terrified at the moment. Yeah, I know they get thrown out and they have got a tiger by the tail with regards to their economy. If their economy begins to contract, the local people will it'll tear itself apart. So they're being forced to deliver a certain amount of energy in there. But they've just had the worst drought that any country has ever experienced, as far as we're aware, ever. Now, China also has the largest wind programme and solar programme. They don't want to burn the planet. This is a critical emergency. It is. I mean, debating whether or not this is an emergency is debating whether or not water boils at 100 degrees.
No. We should be allowed to have an open debate about this. And I think what really cheeses people off is we've not had a proper debate about this. We've had the BBC, the Labour and Conservative parties all agreeing around this, and we want to have a more open debate about it. There's nothing wrong with that, John, is there?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the debate, but you also need to take on the science. The men and women that I've worked with over the last 30 years, these are not fools. They don't want it to be true. How about this? I don't want climate change to be real. I have a family. I don't want it to be real, but it doesn't matter what I want or what I believe. Unfortunately, the science is clear. This is a catastrophe.
Well, even if you're right, and you may well be.
Thank you.
You may well be. You know, maybe I should glue myself to roads. I don't know. And that's what worries me. This level of alarmism is leading to damaged mental health in young people and some of these actions. But even if you are right, John, I'm sceptical Britain can make much difference. But look, I would say to you, John Grant, that you are a sensible environmentalist. We've had a good, open, honest debate, and I think people perhaps have learnt something from it. And thank you for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
Now, getting the voice of the public. That's why we come on the road. We want to know what the public think. We want to know what burning questions the public have. Earlier on, it was a show of hands. What we've done now, members of the audience have filled in questions. They've been filtered out by the team. I have no idea. I know his name's Richard, but I've no idea what he wants to ask, what he wants to say. Far away.
Are large corporations and government complicit in greenwashing? And is that obviously means that net zero doesn't mean anything?
Well, I mean, net zero, you know, Boris used to say, isn't it absolutely marvellous that we've reduced our carbon emissions by 44% since 1990? We've done it by deindustrialising. We've done it by closing down refineries, by closing down our steel industry, moving it to India and China, who then export the goods back to us. Global CO2 goes up, but we've played the big virtue game.
It's a nonsense and it's cost us.
It has cost us very, very dear. And I'll add one last thing, Richard, if I can, to that.
Yeah.
Not just the damage to manufacturing that's happened and places like Stoke, you know, that actually have suffered directly from it, but also we should be energy independent. We have the gas and oil reserves in this country.
Just down the road.
We should be an energy exporter, and I think it's unforgivable what both parties have done on that question. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
OK, Tony.
Good evening, Nigel.
Hi, Tony.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I think we're in big trouble, and for the foreseeable future. And I don't know about everyone else in the room, but I can only think of one person who can get us out of this trouble. Now,
well,
it's that bloke at the back there. A few weeks ago, Nigel, you were asked if you would consider getting back into politics.
Yeah.
And as I recall, your answer was yes, but you couldn't do it alone.
Yeah.
And you needed some big names to come over from the dark side to support you. And I just wondered whether there's been any indication of any of those big names making that journey.
Courage is a very rare commodity amongst our leaders. I'm not seeing a great deal of it yet, but I remain of the view that the Conservative Party have now become the problem and not the solution. They only went for Brexit very, very reluctantly because, frankly, they were kicked into it by people voting Brexit Party, voting UKIP and all the rest of it. I would like to think we can get a realignment of British politics where we get a party that is unashamedly patriotic and means it, believes in border controls, believes that actually mass legal immigration too has to be sensibly controlled, and that is on the side not just of the big corporates that we talked about a moment ago, but is on the side of men and women, 5.5 million of them, running their own business in this country, about to see their taxes go through the roof. There's been no regulatory benefit so far from leaving the European Union. So I want to see a realignment. Tony, I've not seen them yet, but for the minute, I will go on through GB News and social media and elsewhere, providing alternative narratives. And I hope you feel this channel is doing that and contributing to the national debate. Thank you very much indeed. There's no clock. There isn't a clock. Glenn, it's been removed.
Hi, Nigel.
Good evening.
I'd like to ask, why is it anyone who's patriotic and cares about the traditional values of this country labelled as far right instead of right by far?
Everyone's far right. The Italian elections are won by the far right. The French elections have got the far right. Israel has gone far right. And I think in the BBC's terminology, most of you in this room would be dangerous far right extremists. Yes. I remember years ago being called a crank and a gadfly, a fruitcake. Just ignore all this abuse. It's just utterly ridiculous. The truth of it is that the metropolitan big cities like London have gone so far towards the loopy liberal left that people with views that are just vaguely traditional, just vaguely patriotic, are now being demonised for doing it. Let me give you, though, Glenn, a piece of very, very good news. We are in the majority, not those in London who try and tell us what to think. All right. OK, Anne. Anne, good evening.
Good evening. After the fishing rights agreed in the post-Brexit trade deal, the French are still fishing in the UK side of the English Channel, which includes super trawlers that massively exceed their allowance. My question is, the UK are not allowed to fish in the French waters of the Channel, so why is it perfectly OK for us to fish out illegal immigrants from the French waters of the Channel?
Well, no, you're absolutely right, Anne. They get the fish, we get the migrants. You're absolutely right. There are actually, from what I can see of it now, more French and Dutch boats fishing literally on the 6-mile line off the south coast than there ever were before Brexit. We appear to be too cowardly to do anything about it. Look, you know, I did at the time point out that the fisheries cut of the Brexit deal was absolutely dreadful. The British fishing industry thus far has seen very little benefit from it. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, this is unfinished business. If Norway and the Faroes and Iceland can have a 200-mile exclusive economic zone, we can have 200 miles or the median line round the UK. And I tell you what, Anne, one day we'll get it. Brexit was the beginning of getting back our rights and liberties. We may at the moment have politicians who are trying to reject that. We will, the silent majority, we will in the end get our way. I promise you.
Thank you.
And finally, Stephen.
Hi, Nigel. Is the modern-day political manifesto worth the paper it's written on? They tell us anything they want to when they're running for election, and then that's forgotten about.
I tell you what I'm going to do, Stephen. I'm going to ask that question to my next guest, Jonathan Gullis, MP. I'm going to ask him whether successive Conservative manifestos promising net migration would run at tens of thousands a year, and now we learn 4.2 million new people have come to Britain since David Cameron became Prime Minister. I'm going to ask him, was it worth the paper it was written on? As far as I'm concerned, and you can call me very cynical, they tell us what they think we want to hear at election time without ever wanting to deliver it. And frankly, we can criticise the Tories. I don't view Labour as being any better. That is the political crisis that we're in. We need a fresh approach, new parties, new leadership. Thank you. We're going to take a break in a minute. Jonathan Gullis comes into the lion's den and sits here.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales
And Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
OK, it's time for Talking Pints. Enthusiastic crowd. Jonathan Gullis is the Conservative Member of Parliament for Stoke-on-Trent North. Jonathan, before politics, you were a school teacher known as Grumpy Gullis. This is not good, is it?
Well, I remember in my first year of teaching that you fall into that trap of thinking if the kids like you, they're going to behave. And actually, the teachers I saw that delivered the best lessons are the ones that had firm behaviour, discipline in their classroom and weren't worried about being popular. So the smile went and Grumpy Gullis came about, and it served me well for the 8.5 years I worked in the profession anyway.
Rewarding job?
Absolutely the best job you can do. And, you know, my partner's a teacher as well, still to this day. And I think it's, you know, levelling up to mean anything, and I've said this relentlessly, education is where it's going to come from. I can build all the shiny buildings I want in Stoke-on-Trent North, Kids Go and Talk. I can put all the brand new jobs up here. But if I don't make sure it's Stoke-on-Trent people filling those jobs, then levelling up will be a failure. So education is the way that that's going to be turned around.
And does that include skills and trades, or should we all go to university to get degrees in ologies?
Nigel, you are bang on the money. You've always said it, and I'm one of those who've been saying it as well. We need to get back to understanding and appreciating just how important the plumber, the sparky, the person on the factory floor is, as much as the person who does their English and history degree as well. And Germany, to be fair to them, has had it right that if you do a A-level equivalent over there, it's as important as doing a plumbing qualification. In this country, for far too long, education meant university or nothing. And thankfully, Tony Blair is now gone, and Gordon Brown's now gone, and we've now got a government and a minister for skills in Robert Halfon who believes in it.
And we've had 5 education secretaries in how long?
A little, not a long enough time, Nigel. And as you know, I recently did get the sacking. So
yeah, I know. We will return to the shambles in a moment. But and there you are. You're a political activist, you get selected for Stoke North, you haven't even turned 30, and you suddenly become an MP. You must have been, shocked, thrilled. What were the emotions?
gobsmacked, to be honest with you, because obviously I accept people lent me a vote. They voted for Boris Johnson. They voted to get Brexit done. They voted for change in this local area because what they wanted or had seen for so long is 70 years of Labour neglect and a lack of aspiration ideas. So I know that I was given opportunity to try and deliver. Obviously, a pandemic, a war in Ukraine has certainly played its part in making this one of the most trickiest times, I think, to be a parliamentarian. However, my children are born and raised here, bought my first ever house in the local area, proud to get on the train Monday, come back Wednesday night, don't want to spend too long in London. The wokery is quite infectious, so you have to make sure you get away from it as quickly as possible. So, for me, I'm just delighted to be in a community, have the opportunity. And, of course, as I say to all my constituents, in the next general election, they're like Alan Sugar. They either hire me or they fire me, and I look forward to facing that challenge when it comes.
Well, I think you're going to have a slight problem, Jonathan, if I'm being frank with you. Not because of what you stand for and what you believe, because I think you do believe in some good things. And I love the fact that you're unafraid. You get kicked off social media sites and you say what you think, and you actually are prepared to defend British history, which I think there's too much of this, isn't there? There's too much of slagging off everything this country has ever stood for, and you made a stand over the National Maritime Museum, didn't you?
Well, that as well, and also the disgusting act when we saw the British flag trying to be burnt on the cenotaph, and actually introducing that new legislation, which Priti Patel adopted as Home Secretary at the time, to make sure you now can serve up to a maximum of 10 years if you go around desecrating war memorials to our glorious dead. It infuriates me, this idea of decolonising the curriculum, this absurd idea that somehow the curriculum is inherently racist when it's actually just trying to teach people about, what we do. And actually, let's not forget, our education system is exported around the world because we are seen as a world leader.
Jonathan, you've stood up for these things and you haven't tried to court popularity in Westminster. I get all that, and I do respect that. But you were elected on a ticket that made a series of promises to the British people. Getting Brexit done was about taking back control of our borders. Yes. In this city, in the last 24 hours, your local council have lost this case, and the historic Stafford Hotel, you heard the passion from the audience about that hotel and what it represents for this city. You're losing, aren't you? You're losing this, because why would these people vote for you again if the government that you're there and you're a part of it? Well, you were. Well, you were for a bit, but until they got rid of you. But why would they vote for you again if they see catastrophic failure on that level?
So I think I'm very much on the record, as you know, Nigel, as being someone who is absolutely appalled by what's happening. Suella Braverman has my absolute full support in what she's trying to do. And the demonising of her, the demonising of Priti Patel, in order to try and take back control of our borders is shocking. And sadly, when I look across Parliament and I see the opposition who vote against the Nationality and Borders Act, backing their lefty lawyer mates who are taking us to court, preventing us from getting flights off to Rwanda. Let's not forget, Nigel, that will act as a deterrent. If we get planes in the sky, people landing in Rwanda, that will act as a deterrent.
Jonathan Gullis, this is all baloney.
No.
None of this is going to happen until we complete Brexit. And we don't complete Brexit if we allow a judge in Strasbourg to make sure that flight can't take off on the tarmac.
Nigel, I'm very much on the record as being very sympathetic towards the idea of leaving the ECHR. And I certainly will, and I know the government is looking at it, but let me be clear about this.
Looking at it.
Well, look, Nigel, I promise you this. I'm on those backbenches and I'll be pushing the case for why we should be doing that, working with colleagues to make our argument, make our case. But you are right. Stoke-on-Trent is the 5th largest contributor to the asylum dispersal scheme. We have currently over 800 asylum seekers in this city. I went absolutely ballistic, and rightly so, at the fact that yet again this city is trying to be dumped on, despite the fact other parts of the country, with lots of Labour MPs who love open borders and free movement, have the grand sum of zero in their local area. I bet if we started dumping people in their hotels, in their nice 5-star hotels, or on their high streets, or in their local communities, they'll be outraged as well. What we're seeing is tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, going to the French, and I agree with you on this, by the way. The French have not stepped up. I know that we've got 28,000 stop journeys, but they're not doing enough. They're too busy, as we've seen from video footage, sitting on beaches and allowing boats to land. They're not patrolling their waters and dragging people back to shore. And as for Nigel, this is an important point. And as for Albania,
blaming everybody else.
As for Albania, Nigel, let's be quite frank. The Prime Minister of Albania has been very upset with the comments made by the Home Secretary. If his country is so great, why are so many of his people trying to leave it?
Quite. And do you know who's advising? Who's doing the PR?
Alistair Campbell.
Alistair Campbell is advising the Albanian government. What a great job he's doing. Well, I'll give you a tip. As somebody much older than you, who's been around the block a bit, I think you're going to have a hell of a job to get re-elected. Not because people here don't think you've done your bit and stood up, not because people don't think you've got the right values, but because it's, you know, it's vote Jonathan and you get Rishi Sunak or you get whoever the leader may be. But there could be another 4 leaders by then, who knows? But I think if you were one of those people brave enough, not to say, I'll look at the ECHR, but actually campaign for us to get back real control of our borders, not to have foreign judges, I reckon you might have a much stronger chance. Last thought, Brexit. Have the people of Stoke seen enough benefit from Brexit yet?
No. And that's something that we as a government need to make sure we do deliver on. Because my area voted 73% leave. Those people rightly voted for that. I campaigned for it. I was delighted and proud. And thank you to you, Nigel, because without your campaigning, we wouldn't have seen that on the 2015 Conservative Party manifesto as far as I was concerned. So thank you genuinely from me. As someone who's proud to have been a Brexiteer. But you are right. It's going to be a tremendous challenge. I'm the first ever Conservative MP in the history of this seat. Yeah. Of course, there's levelling up fund projects that we need to deliver. We need to deliver on stopping illegal economic migrants coming across our channel. We need to deliver on making sure that we're delivering the skills and the investment in our local areas. Well, look, we've had, and I rattle off these numbers a lot, the 56 million levelling up fund, the 500 Home Office jobs, the 17.6 million Kidsgrove Town deal, which has seen the sports centre reopen, up to 1,700 jobs being created at Chatterley Valley West, £30 million of buses. And I know people will rightly say, but we haven't seen or felt all that. I promise you by the next election, I will be working my guts off to make sure that is seen on the ground. If not, then I will face the beautiful part of democracy, which is obviously the hiring or the sacking.
And you will face these good people, and we thank you for coming into the Lion's Den here on Talking Pints.
Thank you, Nigel. Good to see you.
Thank you. Now, we've got for you Robbie Williams comes from Stoke. We couldn't get Robbie Williams, but we have got Ben Tavill, a local singer, and he's going to sing us out to Let Me Entertain You. And thank you, everybody, for coming along. Good to see you.
It's gonna happen here, there's nothing left for you to fear. Shake your ass, come over here, now scream. I'm a burning effigy of everything I used to be. You're my rock of empathy, my dear. So come on, let me entertain you. Let me entertain you. Life's too short for you to die. Grab yourself an alibi. Heaven knows your mother lied. Mon cher, I'll separate you right from wrongs. Come and sing a different song. The kettle's on, so don't be long. Mon cher, so come on, let me entertain you. Let me entertain you. Look me up in the yellow pages. I will be your rock of ages. See through facts and your crazy phases, yeah. A little Bo Peep has lost her sheep. She popped a pill and fell asleep. The dew is wet but the grass is sweet. My dear, your mind gets burned with the habits you've learned, but with a generation that's gotta be heard. You're tired of your teachers and your school's a drag. You're not gonna end up like your mom and dad. So come on, let me entertain you. Let me entertain you. Let me entertain you. He may be good, he may be out of sight, but he can't be here, so come around tonight. Here is the place where the feeling grows. You gotta get high before you taste the lows.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Drier weather for many during the next 24 hours, but showers will continue in places, and for some, Thunderstorms will happen, particularly overnight. An area of low pressure is sliding to the southwest of the UK, and then it will run along the English Channel. That's going to bring some lively weather. It's already pepping up the showers across parts of Wales and the southwest. That will continue through the evening. Thunderstorms possible, and the risk of 30 to 40 millimetres of rain falling in one or two spots in a short space of time. That could cause some issues overnight, and then that risk transfers into southeastern shores by the end of the night. Eventually, parts of Kent affected by dawn. Otherwise, clearing skies across much of the UK, and with light winds, temperatures dipping into the mid or even low single figures, and in one or two shelter spots down below freezing, -2, -3 Celsius across parts of northern UK first thing. But plenty of dry and bright weather around, the showers in the south clearing away, and then further showers will affect northwestern areas, particularly those areas exposed to the northwest wind, so northwest Scotland, northwest England. But away from the showers, plenty of sunny spells, and a colder day compared with recent days. Temperatures reaching 13 Celsius generally in the south, 11 in the north. Now through the evening, clearing skies will lead to a touch of frost in places, but towards the end of the night, the cloud thickens, the breeze picks up, and outbreaks of rain will move into parts of Northern Ireland, West Wales